Blood trickled down Olivia Turner's swollen lip as she stumbled through the dusty main street of Silverdale, Arizona Territory. 1879. Her torn dress dragging in the dirt and one eye nearly swollen shut from her stepfather's latest beating. The midday sun beat down mercilessly as townsfolk stopped to stare and whisper behind raised hands, their judgment cutting deeper than her physical wounds. "Look at that Turner girl," a woman hissed to her companion. "Probably deserved whatever she got." "Disgrace to decent folk," muttered another, loud enough for Olivia to hear. Olivia clutched her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders, trying to hide the bruises that decorated her arms like painful watercolors. At 22, she'd endured 5 years of her stepfather's cruelty since her mother passed, and each day felt heavier than the last. She kept her gaze fixed on the ground, wishing she could disappear into the dry earth beneath her feet. The whispers grew louder as she approached the general store. A group of men lounging outside the saloon across the street began to call out, their voices slurred with morning whiskey. "Hey there, damaged goods," one shouted, triggering cruel laughter. "Who'd want to court a girl who looks like she tangled with a grizzly?" Another joined in. Tears stung Olivia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. 5 more steps to the general store. 4, 3, the bell above the door seemed miles away. Reckon her pa's got the right idea, beating some sense into that wild one. That voice belonged to Franklin Peters, a local rancher who'd once tried to corner her behind the church during a social. Olivia's pace quickened, but her worn boot caught on an uneven plank, sending her sprawling into the dirt right in front of the jeering crowd. The contents of her small basket, a few eggs she'd planned to sell, cracked and oozed into the dust. The laughter swelled around her like a suffocating wave. Olivia's hands trembled as she tried to gather the broken shells, dignity shattering alongside them. A crowd began to form, the morning entertainment apparently too good to miss. "Look at the mess she's made," a woman tutted, "just like her mother." Olivia froze at the mention of her mother. The pain was too much, the physical wounds, the humiliation, the cruel words. She stayed on her knees, unable to find the strength to rise as the crowd's mockery rained down upon her. Then a shadow fell across her crumpled form. The laughter abruptly died. Through her good eye, Olivia saw a pair of worn leather boots planted firmly in the dirt beside her. Strong, sun-bronzed hands reached down, and before she could react, something settled gently on her head, a wide-brimmed Stetson, well-worn but carefully maintained. "That's enough," came a voice as steady and unyielding as the mountains to the west. "This woman is under my protection now." Olivia raised her head to see a tall man standing over her, his broad shoulders squared against the crowd. She recognized him immediately, Mason Vance, the new ranch foreman at the Rocking H. He'd arrived in Silverdale only 3 months ago, but his reputation as a fair but formidable man had spread quickly. Unlike most of the cowboys who drifted through town, he didn't frequent the saloons or cause trouble. Some said he'd been a lawman before coming to Arizona. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Even Franklin Peters fell silent. Mason knelt beside Olivia, his voice gentling as he spoke just for her ears. "May I help you up, Miss Turner?" Stunned, Olivia nodded. His hand was warm and calloused as it wrapped around hers, lifting her effortlessly to her feet. His hat slipped slightly, and he adjusted it carefully on her head. "My hat looks better on you anyway," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And anyone who has a problem with Miss Turner will answer to me." His hand settled protectively at the small of her back. Franklin Peters stepped forward, liquid courage making him bold. "You claiming her, Vance? Damaged goods ain't worth the trouble." The crowd held its collective breath. Mason's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "I'm claiming that any man who'd strike a woman isn't fit to call himself a man," Mason replied, his voice deceptively calm. "And any person who'd mock someone's suffering has a black heart that'll answer to their maker someday." His gaze swept the gathered townspeople. "Miss Turner is under my protection now. Remember that." The crowd began to disperse, murmuring and casting backward glances. Mason gently guided Olivia toward the general store. "Why?" she whispered, her voice hoarse from unshed tears. Mason didn't answer immediately. When they reached the store's porch, away from curious ears, he turned to face her. Without the hat, his dark hair caught the sunlight, and his blue eyes studied her with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "Because no one deserved to be treated like that," he finally said. "And because I've seen that look before in my sister's eyes before I got her away from her husband." He paused. "You don't have to go back there, Miss Turner." Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. "I have nowhere else to go. You do now." Mason's gaze was steady, resolute. "Mrs. Hollister at the Rocking H needs help with cooking and housekeeping. There's a small cabin on the property where you could stay." "But you don't even know me," Olivia protested, though hope flickered dangerously in her chest. "I know enough." His voice softened. "I know you sell eggs and mend clothes to make your own money. I know you help the widow Mackenzie with her children on Sundays, and I know no one deserves what's happened to you." Olivia's fingers touched the brim of his hat, still perched on her head. "Your hat, keep it," Mason said. "In fact, I insist on it. People will talk," she whispered. A small smile touched his lips. "Let them. Sometimes talk is just wind and wind changes direction." He gestured to the store. "Get what you need. I'll wait here and escort you to the ranch after." "What about my things at home?" Mason's expression hardened. "We'll send Sheriff Daniels with us to collect them. Your stepfather won't touch you again." For the first time in years, Olivia felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not merely hope, but possibility. The ride to the Rocking H was quiet, the rhythmic clop of hooves against the dusty trail soothing Olivia's frayed nerves. Sheriff Daniels had accompanied them to her stepfather's house, where Mason had stood like a stone sentinel while she gathered her meager belongings. Her stepfather, Joel, had sputtered and raged, but one look at Mason's cold eyes and the sheriff's resolute stance had silenced him. "You'll be back," Joel had spat as she left. "No decent man wants used goods." Mason had stepped forward then, his voice low. "Speak to her like that again, and you'll regret it." Now, as the ranch came into view, a sprawling property with a handsome main house, sturdy barn, and several outbuildings, Olivia felt both terrified and exhilarated. She still wore Mason's hat, having tried to return it twice during their journey. "It suits you," he'd insisted each time. "Besides, the sun out here is merciless. Consider it practical assistance." Mrs. Hollister turned out to be a robust woman in her 50s with kind eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. She took one look at Olivia's bruised face and ushered her inside, shooting Mason an approving glance. "About time someone stood up for that girl," she declared. "The whole town's been blind to what that monster's been doing." "Not blind," Mason corrected quietly, "just unwilling to see." The cabin they'd promised was small but clean, with a real bed, a small stove, and a window that looked out over the rolling grasslands. Olivia stood in the center of it, overwhelmed by the sudden turn her life had taken. "It's not much," Mason said from the doorway. "It's everything," Olivia replied, her voice catching. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a current of understanding that needed no words. "Get settled," he said finally. "Mrs. Hollister will show you your duties tomorrow. Rest tonight." As he turned to leave, Olivia called out, "Mr. Vance." He paused, looking back. "Thank you for your hat, and everything else." His smile was brief but genuine. "Mason, call me Mason." The weeks that followed were the most peaceful of Olivia's adult life. The work was hard cooking for ranch hands, helping with laundry, keeping the main house in order, but Mrs. Hollister was fair and kind. The bruises faded, and with them, some of the fear that had been her constant companion. Mason kept his distance, professional and polite whenever their paths crossed. But Olivia often caught him watching her, his blue eyes thoughtful. Sometimes he would tip an imaginary hat to her, a small gesture that never failed to bring a smile to her face. Word spread through Silverdale about Mason Vance's public claiming of Olivia Turner. Some gossip was cruel, as expected, but to Olivia's surprise, other reactions were different. Mrs. Mackenzie from church brought her a basket of preserves. The blacksmith's wife offered her fabric remnants for sewing. It seemed that by taking a stand, Mason had reminded some people of their better natures. One evening, about a month after her arrival at the ranch, Olivia was hanging laundry behind her cabin when she heard approaching hoofbeats. Mason dismounted from his horse, leading a small wagon behind him. "Evening, Miss Turner," he greeted, removing his new hat, a less worn replacement for the one she still kept carefully on a peg by her door. "Mr. Vance," she replied, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. "Is something wrong at the main house?" "Nothing at all," he gestured to the wagon. "I brought you something." Curious, Olivia approached. The wagon contained several planks of wood, a bag of soil, and various seedlings. "Mrs. Hollister mentioned you were asking about starting a garden," Mason explained. "I thought you might like some help building raised beds. The soil here is good, but these will help with drainage." Olivia stared at the supplies, then at Mason. "You did this for me?" He looked almost embarrassed. "It's nothing fancy. Just thought it might make this place feel more like home." "No one's ever," she stopped, swallowed hard. "Thank you." They worked together as the sun set, Mason showing her how to construct the simple frames while she decided where each plant should go. Their conversation flowed easily, punctuated by comfortable silences. Olivia learned that Mason had grown up in Kansas, that he had indeed been a deputy sheriff before coming to Arizona, and that his sister now lived safely in Colorado with her 2 children. "Why did you leave law work?" she asked as they patted soil around the last tomato plant. Mason was quiet for a moment. "I couldn't save everyone," he finally said. "Wore on me after a while, needed a change." "Is that why you helped me? Because of your sister?" He looked at her directly then, his gaze intense. "That's part of it, but not all." Before she could ask what he meant, he stood and dusted off his hands. "It's getting dark. I should let you rest. Would you like to stay for coffee?" The invitation surprised even Olivia. Mason hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that very much." It became a pattern. Mason would stop by her cabin every few evenings, sometimes bringing small gifts. A book from town, seeds for her garden, a sturdy wooden box he'd made for her sewing supplies. They would talk, sometimes late into the night, about everything and nothing. Olivia learned to laugh again. Mason discovered he had a talent for making her smile. The ranch hands noticed, of course. Some teased Mason good-naturedly about his interest in Miss Olivia, as they called her. Others, remembering the day he'd placed his hat on her head in town, nodded with approval when they saw the foreman heading toward her cabin in the evenings. Summer bloomed across the territory, bringing scorching days and brief, violent thunderstorms. Olivia's garden flourished under her care, and she began bringing fresh vegetables to the main house kitchen. Mrs. Hollister praised her cooking and entrusted her with more responsibilities. "That girl's blossoming like those tomato plants of hers," Mrs. Hollister remarked to Mason one evening as they watched Olivia teach one of the younger ranch hands how to properly set a table for the owner's upcoming visit. Mason nodded, a small smile on his lips. "She's strong. Always was, just needed a safe place to remember it." "And what about you, Mrs. Hollister asked shrewdly. "Found what you were looking for yet?" Mason didn't answer, but his eyes never left Olivia. The 4th of July brought a ranch celebration, with all the workers and their families gathering for a picnic and dancing. Olivia wore a new dress she'd sewn herself from fabric purchased with her own wages, and for the first time in years, she felt pretty. She was arranging desserts on a long table when Mason approached, looking uncharacteristically nervous in his best shirt and clean trousers. "Miss Turner," he greeted formally, "you look beautiful today." Olivia blushed. "Thank you, and I've told you to call me Olivia." "Olivia," he corrected, the name soft on his lips. "Would you do me the honor of saving a dance for me this evening?" Her heart skipped. "I'm not much of a dancer." "Neither am I," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "We can be bad at it together." When the fiddles struck up after dinner, Mason found her immediately. His hand was warm at her waist, his movements surprisingly graceful for a man who claimed no dancing skill. As they twirled among the other couples, Olivia caught glimpses of approving smiles and nodding heads. "People are watching us," she murmured. "Let them," Mason replied, echoing his words from that first day. "I'm only concerned with one person's opinion tonight." The music slowed and he drew her closer. "Olivia, I need to ask you something." Her pulse quickened. "Yes. Would you allow me to court you properly? I know it's only been a few months, but yes," she interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. "I would like that very much." The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Their courtship was traditional and unhurried. Mason asked permission to escort her to church on Sundays. He brought her wildflowers and took her on picnics by the creek that ran through the ranch property. They talked about their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. The first time he kissed her was on a warm August evening. They'd been sitting on the small porch of her cabin, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Mason had been telling her about his plans to buy land of his own someday. "I've been saving," he said. "Another year or two and I'll have enough for a decent start. Nothing fancy but good grazing land, maybe some timber." "It sounds wonderful," Olivia replied, imagining such a place. Mason turned to her, his expression suddenly serious. "Would you like to see it? When I find it, I mean." The question held more weight than its simple words suggested. Olivia met his gaze steadily. "I would like that very much." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek in his palm. "Olivia, I think I've been falling in love with you since the day I put my hat on your head." "The day you claimed me," she whispered. "No," he corrected gently. "The day I promised to protect you." "There's a difference. I don't want to claim you like property. I want to earn the right to stand beside you." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. "I think you already have." When he leaned forward, she met him halfway. The kiss was tender, respectful, but with an undercurrent of passion that left them both breathless. "I love you, Olivia Turner," Mason said when they finally parted, "and I swear I'll spend my life making sure you never feel afraid again." Summer turned to fall, and with the cooling weather came changes. Mr. Hollister, impressed with Mason's management of the ranch, promoted him to full ranch manager with a substantial raise. Olivia's skills in the kitchen earned her the position of head cook when Mrs. Hollister announced her intention to visit her sister in California for the winter. Their courtship deepened. Mason began teaching Olivia to ride, delighting in her natural aptitude. She taught him to dance properly, laughing at his exaggerated mistakes. They read books together in the evenings, sometimes aloud to each other by lamplight. Not everything was perfect. Olivia still startled at loud noises, a remnant of her years with her stepfather. Sometimes nightmares would wake her, leaving her shaking and tearful. On those nights, she would wrap herself in the quilt Mason had commissioned from the town seamstress and sit on her porch, finding comfort in the stars until morning came. One crisp October day, Mason suggested a ride to a ridge overlooking the ranch. They packed a simple lunch and set out in the early morning, enjoying the changing colors of the landscape. When they reached the overlook, Olivia gasped at the view: rolling hills stretching toward distant mountains, the ranch buildings tiny in the valley below. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Mason helped her down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist. "There's something else I wanted to show you." He led her a little farther along the ridge to where a small creek tumbled down the rocks. Beside it stood the beginnings of a structure: foundation stones laid out in a rectangle, several stacked logs, and a pile of lumber. "What is this?" Olivia asked, confused. Mason took a deep breath. "Mr. Hollister sold me this parcel, 200 acres, including this ridge and the valley beyond." He gestured to the partially built structure. "And that's going to be our home, if you want it to be." Olivia's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Mason." He took her hands in his. "I had it all planned. I was going to wait until the house was further along, make it perfect before asking." But I can't wait anymore. He knelt before her, still holding her hands. Olivia Turner, I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love how you hum when you're cooking and talk to your plants. I love the way you see beauty in everything, even after all you've endured. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me here? Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks, but these were different from any she'd shed before. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. Mason slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and promise of their future together. They were married in the town church on Christmas Eve, 1879. To Olivia's surprise, nearly the entire town attended. The same people who had once whispered behind their hands now offered congratulations and well wishes. Even Franklin Peters approached them after the ceremony, hat in hand, to offer a gruff apology for his behavior. People can change, Mason murmured as they watched Peters walk away. When shown a better path, Mrs. Hollister, back from California, hosted the reception at the ranch. As the celebration continued around them, Mason led Olivia outside to where a wagon waited, decorated with ribbons and loaded with their belongings. Ready to see our home, Mrs. Vance? He asked, his voice reverent on her new name. Their cabin was simple but sturdy, with 2 rooms, large windows to catch the morning light, and a stone fireplace. Mason had furnished it with pieces he'd either made himself or commissioned from the town carpenter. A solid table with 4 chairs, a comfortable bed, shelves for Olivia's books. It's not finished, he apologized as he carried her over the threshold. I'll add on in the spring a proper kitchen for you, maybe another bedroom or 2 for, he stopped, suddenly shy. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck. For our children someday, his smile was answer enough. That night, as they lay together as husband and wife for the first time, Olivia marveled at how far she had come from that broken, terrified girl in the dust of Silverdale's Main Street. What are you thinking? Mason asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm thinking about your hat, she replied. He chuckled. My hat, the one you put on my head that day, do you know I still have it? I keep it to remind me of the moment everything changed. Mason's expression grew serious. I put that hat on your head because I couldn't bear to see you hurt. I had no idea then that I was also protecting my own heart. Olivia kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. Thank you for seeing me when no one else would. Spring came early to their corner of the Arizona Territory in 1880. The land around their expanding home burst into bloom, mirroring the happiness that filled their days. Mason's small herd of cattle grew, as did Olivia's garden. They worked side by side, building their dream one day at a time. In May, Olivia received news that her stepfather had left Silverdale, reportedly heading for California after gambling away what little he owned. She felt nothing but relief, the last shadows of her past finally receding. By summer, their home had doubled in size, with a spacious kitchen where Olivia experimented with recipes, often inviting the Hollisters and ranch hands for dinner. Mason built a wide porch where they could sit in the evenings, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. It was on that porch, as August heat gave way to cooler evenings, that Olivia shared her most precious news. Mason, she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. We're going to have a baby. The joy that transformed his face was worth every hardship she had ever endured. He gathered her in his arms, laughing and crying at once, making plans and promises that their child would know nothing but love and safety. That night, as they lay in bed, Mason's protective hand resting on her abdomen, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a bruised girl mocked by cruel townspeople to a beloved wife and mother-to-be, her life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. What are you thinking about now? Mason asked, seeming to read her mind as he so often did. Olivia smiled in the darkness. I was thinking that sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best. He pulled her closer. And I was thinking that the best decision I ever made was placing my hat on the head of the strongest, most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. As they drifted to sleep, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that the family they were creating would never know the pain she had endured. Their children would grow up surrounded by love, learning strength and kindness from their father, resilience and compassion from their mother. And someday, she would tell them the story of how their parents found each other of a bruised girl, a crowded street, and the cowboy who saw past her wounds to the woman she could become. She would tell them how sometimes protection comes in unexpected forms, like a well-worn hat placed gently on a bowed head. And most importantly, she would teach them that love, true love, sees the best in people even when they cannot see it in themselves.